My apologies for that. My mobile phone and Ecamm Live streaming software to my audio interface not playing well together. Good evening and welcome. We'll try that again. Hi and welcome to ADSR. My name's Paul Nolan, and for the next hour we are going to be diving deep into Baby Audio's beautiful, brand new, and indeed first ever synth plugin. So it's called the BA-1, which is obviously something we're going to dive into, and we're going to get really deep into some sound design with it. As I mentioned before on Instagram when I promoted the stream, we're going to be going a little bit more into dub techno territory this evening, so it's going to be quite a nice and quite a deep dive into more lo-fi leaning production techniques. So we're going to play with as many of the features as we possibly can. We're going to look at some of the presets that come with BA-1, and also ADSR and Baby Audio have basically partnered up to bring you a deal so that between now and May 25th, you can get 50% off the retail price of BA-1, and that's not all. So you can expand your enjoyment of the BA-1 with 50 original lo-fi presets, courtesy of the good people here at ADSR that keep inviting me back, even though my microphone refuses to work at the beginning of every live stream. Oh dear. Anyway, if you want to know more about that, you can check the links in the description. I'm sure it's all happening underneath there. And while you're there, you can give us a like, you can share this video with your music producing friends, and also give us a subscribe as well. Obviously, all of these things really help with the algorithm and really help ADSR and myself to bring you more amazing content like this. If you have any questions towards the end of today's stream, please rack them up in the chat. I do a little 5 minutes at the end, or 5-10 minutes at the end, where we go through people's comments and we can obviously answer your questions, clarify everything if it's not clear. Looking forward to speaking with you all a little bit later on. So without much further ado, as they say in the trade, we're going to go straight in. And for those of you who've seen my other streams on ADSR, this might be a little bit of a different look for you, because I've done all of my streams so far in Ableton, and I've just felt like a little bit of a change of scene this evening. I thought we would get into Logic Pro because I've been doing a lot of production work in Logic at the moment, and it's really enjoyable. So let's have a little listen to the track, or the little bit of a loop, this dub techno loop we've got going on with BA-1. And let's have a little bit of a preview, a bit of a demo. So we've got 3 instances of the brand new BA-1 going, and we'll get 1 or 2 more going by the end of the hour here. And what I really love about the BA-1 is its simplicity, because it is based on a really cult classic 80s synth, which was incredibly lo-fi and didn't really look like much, shall we say, aesthetically, although obviously the lo-fi vibe is very pleasing to us now in 2023, but it disguised a really, really big sound. And it was actually a Yamaha CS01, which was the synth in question. So again, it's the beginning of that, building up towards the likes of, the Yamaha CS80, which is, very much a popular synth and a legendary synth through composers like Vangelis, for example, Blade Runner, that kind of stuff as well. So, the lineage of the CS series is very much alive and well. But again, as Baby Audio have said, this is not a straight emulation, it's an evolution. So it's very much inspired by that synth, but there's a lot of things in here that are really, really beautiful, actually, and beautiful for modern producers, because the speed at which I've been able to get great sound and patches going in this thing, and not just the presets either, from scratch, is absolutely super impressive. So again, like this is the app, this is the user interface, obviously, and just the level of information that you get and the layout is incredibly well done. I mean, obviously we can get some decorative things out the way first, where you've got obviously a grey front panel and you can have the blue, you can have the purple. And, you know, with this being a blue track, I've got obviously a blue region here. It's this pluck that we're looking at here. I might just color that blue. And again, if I move up to this one here, which is the drone, I might just give that a purple color so I know which one it is. And obviously, you know, I can change the other two depending upon my mood. So that, again, just very simply as a aesthetic change, that's a workflow tip wrapped up in an aesthetic piece of, like, you know, beauty, shall we say, which is being able to actually name and color your regions and also your baby audio BA-1 after your particular track in question. So again, very, very solid layout, very easy to understand. And again, it's very, very simplistic looking, but again, under the hood, really, really cool stuff. So what we've got here are two oscillators capable of a multitude of different waves. So you have obviously here a triangle wave, which is what it's currently set to here in oscillator 1. You've also got sawtooth, you've got pulse waves and square waves, and also the ability to go into a PWM, a pulse width modulation mode as well, which is quite nice. Again, the octave bars, if you will, which is obviously incorporated from things like organs, are very much apparent here in terms of the pitching. So again, you can pitch via this element here and obviously play your root note, but also tune based on this pitch control here. And also what's really nice is that you've got this as a really like solid, you know, root note kind of oscillator here that will play whatever it is that you want it to play. And then over here in oscillator 2, you have the fine and octave controls as well. So you can go into things like Synth and be able to go more into, again, a more octave control, which means you can go up to an octave either side, which is quite nice. And from there, you've obviously got some great tonal blending tools. You've also got a mixer here, crossfade between oscillator 1 and oscillator 2. This really lovely glissando control as well, which allows you to bend notes. So this is something that we're going to look at here in just a moment. FM could not be simpler. So again, for those of you feeling a little bit intimidated by frequency modulation synthesis, again, you've just got a plus or a minus here, and it's a great way of getting the oscillators to, again, fold back on one another, provide a bit more of that rich tonality. And again, with it being a bit of an 80s classic evolution, the BA-1, it's great to actually have a little bit of FM because that's where those really lovely glassy kind of sounds come from. Really lovely filter, which sounds great, can be pushed in the resonance all the way up to being self-resonating as well, which means you can do really interesting sound design tricks. An envelope control, you've got the one envelope, so basically, yeah, it's nice and simple, but you'd be amazed at how quickly you can get some really good stuff going from just the one envelope, not having 3 or 4 envelope generators like other synths, for example. An LFO that allows you to go to oscillator 1 pitch or to the filter. And this is a really unique thing that we've got here, which is its own sidechain, which means that it will actually perform that volume envelope sidechain on its own within the synth. So again, no need to grab for any of those automatic sidechain plugins or indeed possibly a sidechain compressor at that rate. And then at the bottom here, we get into our lovely effects. And again, Baby Audio, well known for their effects. So as you can imagine, the effects are massively on point here in BA-1. You've got a tonal control from dark and bright. You've got drive, a really great sound and delay, a really great reverb, a lovely chorus. And actually, one of my favorite features of this synth is this battery control, because what's great about the original synth and also the BA-1 is that obviously, the original synth in this case was battery operated. It was one of the first truly portable synthesizers where it could actually power itself. But what was really interesting about it, because it was an analog synth, it actually basically would deteriorate in terms of its signal quality and its pitching and other aspects of what makes a synth, if you will, as the batteries wore out. And what a lot of sound designers and synthesists and composers and music producers figured out at the time was that it did some really interesting, if novel, quite weird and pretty much out there stuff, including audio dropouts, wow and flutter, pitch modulations, noise, all of this stuff. And this battery command, this battery level, literally allows you to drain or charge the battery to get different sonic landscapes. So again, if you think about, you know, this kind of the pitch warble that you get on old school 80s kind of like pads, again, this is an 80s classic, so it's well worth kind of like thinking along those lines, you know, that Stranger Things soundtrack or synth wavy type stuff as well. Obviously, you've got your main output here, and as well, one of my favorites, which we'll get to later on, which is this regen function, which we'll play around with a little bit. So what I want to do is I want to play you a couple of the sounds, and I'll play each part of this individually. The drums, just to start off with, just to clear this out, are a load of different samples and loops and stuff that I've put together from various kits in Machine. So again, like really exploring that dub techno sound at the moment, and there's a lot of like layered noise and stuff going on. So we don't really need to look at that too much because we really want to put the focus here on the BA-1. And what we'll do is just play those drums for a second so you know what they sound like, and then we'll be able to solo everything else out. So at the moment, I'm feeling like really inspired by amazing producers like Vril and Rodhard and Deep Chord, that real sort of dystopian style, slightly slower, more emotional, melodic sort of dub techno that just has so much richness and color. And the BA-1's fantastic for this style. And what I've done here is added a couple of different elements with an ARP within Logic, using Logic's own arpeggiator in a couple of cases, and then added the drone in the background. So this first pluck we'll have a listen to now in isolation. I'll just talk a little bit about what I've done here. So the ARP in Logic is just a very, very simple 16th note, very flat, no real great programming, but what I have done here is added a 52% swing, which just gives that little bit of a head nod. Now, if you listen to the BA-1 here and you hear what I mean, it's got that, it's got that kind of like triplet swing, but there's like a bit of undulation. However, if you actually look here at the, if I just pop that away, if you actually look at the note here that's playing it, it's just a single note triggering the ARP. So it's not like I've put some groove on it or I've programmed the notes individually. Not at all. It's the sidechain. So if we just sort of play around with this a little bit, you'll be able to hear it in a bit more detail. And that's what it sounds like completely without. So very cool. So I've dialed in about 40% of the BA-1 at the moment, and that's quite cool. And it's just giving me that little bit of a bounce. That's just working really, really nicely. So again, this sidechain feature can be really, really useful, and you can add it post or pre any effects. So if I were to just show you very quickly here what that sounds like, if I just push this a little bit harder and just click over to the pre mode here, you'll see what I mean. And just turn the reverb up a touch. You can still hear there's that element of reverb to it. And it is a very nice kind of sound, which has given me a bit of a better blend over the entire aspect of the sound. So again, I'll probably pop that back into a tighter arrangement here, where the reverb is not quite as, you know, quite as, shall we say, wet and not quite as kind of obvious and apparent, but it's giving me this lovely little control. And again, all of these aspects and parameters and controls in the BA-1 are actually customizable and automatable as well. So again, I could actually take elements of the sidechain and then automate this up and down as I move through a track. And also as well, the battery control, which is something we talked about as well. We'll give you an example of this now. I'm going to do is I'm just going to give that a bit more level. And you'll hear as I decrease the level, it starts to do these really weird pitch modulations. And you start to get warbles. And as I approach 0 battery, just starts completely breaking up to the point where it actually stops altogether. So you can do things that would be akin to maybe like a tape stop effect, which is, obviously a well-used technique. Now there's various plugins that can do that really nicely. But this battery drain effect is actually really, really cool and could be used at certain points in an arrangement, or, at the end of a track, or emerging from the empty battery at the beginning. So I'll start that at nothing. And this is what I love about the BA-1. It's just so intuitive and so obvious in terms of its layout that it's incredibly quick to get some really interesting sounds going. And again, the tonal shifting is quite interesting as well, where, maybe I want to change the tone of this a little bit. Maybe I'm finding it a little glassy, a little bright. So maybe I can play around with a few different aspects here. So maybe I can make this a bit darker. And you can hear that tone has just brought some of the mids and the lows up a little bit. And of course, I could use the filter for this as well, but having a bit more of a tonal shape, again, I can make it really quite top end if necessary. So I can maybe give that slightly more bite, but slightly more depth with the dark tone as well. I have the same aspect with drive, which I now have an overdrive or a circuit-based sort of overdrive, slight slash sort of distortion, clipping kind of thing. That's really nice. And a bit more subtle with the circuit. And that's one of the things I really like about the drive on the BA-1 here, is that it's not too over the top. I find this sometimes by using certain distortion plugins or certain effects. Sometimes they can, the margin for error or the sweet spot to get something that sounds really great is really, really, really quite small. And this just gives you so much forgiveness, if you will. It's very forgiving in terms of its range, the usable range of the drive here in both configurations. Really, really nice. And, there's lots of different ways of getting to a nice sound. And again, I wouldn't necessarily think to automate the drive on a lot of those distortion plugins, because normally I'm quite obsessed with getting to a sweet spot and then just leaving it. Whereas with this, with the drive, I could imagine myself, if I was in Ableton, for example, I could assign it to an LFO, or what I could do here in Logic, for example, I could quite easily assign this to a knob, if you will, on my machine controller here. Just put that in easy view. I can click on the drive, and there you go. So I've now got that as an automatable control, which means I could go into an automation mode. And play around with that as and when. And again, the same goes for the battery control or any of the other controls actually within the BA-1. So even just tweaking some very, very small parameters here will lead into very subtle but also quite significant changes to the actual sound itself. Now, I've also got the ability to add more reverb. I mean, we probably won't use the delay on this so much because it's quite a repetitive 16-note thing, so you'll probably start to get a bit of smearing in terms of the audio. However, we can play around with the FM, which is quite nice. And the other aspect is something that I've not spoken about yet, which is the fact that the BA-1 has a speaker emulation. So the original synth that the BA-1 was based on or inspired by had a speaker as well, because again, it was designed to be a very portable, very convenient solution for musicians and producers who were actually making music on the go. And what a lot of producers started to do is, because they actually quite liked the sound of the speaker because it was quite lo-fi, they would get a microphone not too dissimilar to something like this Shure SM58 that I'm doing this live stream on, to be able to actually capture the sound of the original synth from the speaker rather than the line output, if you will, or the main out of the synth itself. So a very clever trick, and again, really opens up a lot of sound design possibilities where the ability to layer things are concerned, or to just completely twist the sound and to give it a very, very different kind of vibe. So let's have a listen with it normal, shall we say, and then switch the speaker on to hear the difference. Let's turn that up a bit more. So you can hear a clear difference where it goes a lot more crunchy, a lot more mid-range, and you can lean into that with things like drive and tonality as well. And that's got real bite. Now, one of the things that's really cool about this is that it opens up the possibility of actually taking this version of the BA-1 in terms of the pluck. I can move the clip down here, or the MIDI region. But what I can do on this second iteration, which I'll just give this lovely orange color so we know what's going on, I can turn the speaker off. So what that means then, as I rather pedantically match my orange synth to my orange clip here, you've got the ability to layer, basically, is where I'm going with this. So again, we can play both here at the same time and then just blend the levels a little. There you go. And then we've got a much more powerful sound overall. So you could have a lo-fi layer being the blue at the top here. We could then even just take the battery down a little bit. So you've got a very stable layer in the orange version here of the pluck. And then you've also got the much more lo-fi, you know, wow and flutter, bendy, warbling speaker recorded version, like a reamp almost, as we would call it in, you know, rock music production or metal music production, where you like reamp sounds. You basically are getting that from the BA-1. So it's a beautiful touch and something that you don't see in a lot of other synths, quite frankly. So again, real props to Baby Audio for doing this. Really, really beautiful. So let's move on from the plucky sounds and listen to a drone. This was kind of the basis, to be quite honest, of this idea. Because again, what I like to do on a lot of these live streams is that I actually like to create a track that I would actually finish and then release. So don't be surprised if you hear this in the next few months. But ultimately, this drone really set the scene, essentially. And we'll just listen to this in isolation. And again, it's the side chain, the speaker. There's that bit of drive to it. And again, it's quite a low and quite dirty sound. With a nice bit of resonance to it as well. So it's got that kind of nice sweep to it, which again can be automated through Logic's automation preferences. So from here, it's a slightly different sound. You know, you've got the oscillator 1 here at the top level. You've got the bottom octave here, shall we say, 32 on oscillator 2. It's really mostly oscillator 2 that you can hear. And again, it's in that you know, again, in terms of the wave, it's like a PWN, or it's in a WN mode here, which again allows us to have the glissando connected as well, which is cool. And again, you can really hear that beautiful modulation coming from the FM side of things. So again, another idea, once again, like the pluck, you could do a dry version, if you will, a more speaker-led version. And again, just putting the sidechain back into the pre-mode still gives you that little bit of sidechain movement, but again, the reverb now and the chorus not affected. And neither is the delay either, which has got a little bit of delay on it as well. So this really helps set the scene for the drums that I was selecting for this kind of idea, and the ability to just have something drifting in the background, which, you know, this lovely genre of dub techno really does allow you to do, which, you know, I'll give you a little bit of a sneak peek of that now. If I just move things up a little bit here. The playability of the presets themselves are absolutely fantastic. And speaking of the presets, you know, we've got plenty of them. Again, the 500 or so that BA-1 comes with, absolutely phenomenal. And again, this is one of the included ones within that as well. We've also got, again, the Baby Audio and ADSR pack, which you will get as part of this lovely promotion that we're doing together as a partnership. And from there, obviously, we've got other stuff like we could use pads, for example. So we could actually play around with finding a sound that works quite well as a replacement. And again, if you did want to actually save this, very simple. You hit that save button, comes up. You can put it within the user. We could call it Dust to Dust ADSR. Thank you very much. And it's going to be there in that user folder forevermore. So from here, we can go into the pads. Let's try some different pad sounds and see where we go. Quite like that. And again, another great thing here is if you've got a sound that, you know, is, again, monophonic here, you can actually flick between monophonic and polyphonic modes. So we could actually, if we decided to here, add in, shall we say, another octave just to kind of thicken things up, which will sound a bit more like this. And again, we can really go big on the reverb now. The chorus will help take some of the edge off with the lower battery. And again, we can go for that silky smooth pad sound. Do kind of like the battery version. sidechain really brings it under control as well, which is really nice. So again, these pads from ADSR sounding really, really great. Again, very quick. I've made some adjustments to that. I could call that Carefree Pad 002. That's now in my user library. I can jump back in here. And the preset selection is really, really incredibly simple. Very, very easy to negotiate around and navigate around, and just works. This is the best thing about the BA-1. It just works. It's a very, very simple, very, very elegant synth to work with that has a whole range of tones that really does get under the skin. You know, I've been playing with the BA-1 for a bit now, and honestly, it's become one of the things I just automatically kind of reach for when I'm in the studio, because, you know, I can negotiate a lot of the more fully fledged plugins, and they're great, and I will need them. Obviously, you know, who needs less plugins? You need more plugins, right? But ultimately, this is something that's very immediate, and I'm finding anyway, it works exactly the way that I think. And that is a big, big bonus from that perspective. Now, in saying that, you know, it has been a very inspirational tool, the BA-1. However, not everyone gets to be inspired all the time. So, of course, I'm talking about those times when you sit in front of your DAW, nothing comes out, you get frustrated, there's no real sort of trigger for what it is that you're trying to get out. And again, writer's block definitely happens. But this is where the BA-1 becomes really, really novel, because next to this output button here, you also have this regen button. And this regen button is really quite interesting, because what it will do is essentially completely randomize. So again, you've seen randomized controls on plugins before. You know, nothing new here. However, I mean, they've been on everything from, you know, the first one I remember seeing was the ES2 in Logic back in like 2006 or something. However, the regen here is very different in that other randomizers and stuff like that in other plugins doesn't really get a lot of usable stuff out a lot of the time. However, I've found a lot of usable elements with this regen. So why don't we try, before we do some sound design from scratch, why don't we try to get a really interesting pad sound going that likely didn't exist before? So again, we can hit the regen button. As you can see, everything's moved. Let's just see if it's on its own. Yes, it is. And all of a sudden, I'm in a completely different place. So I could then... Beautiful. Right. And I'm discovering what this patch can do, like on the fly. Because of the randomization of the regen, it's allowed me to have completely different look. So again, the envelope for the filter was all the way up here, and until I brought that envelope all the way down and started playing with the cutoff, I didn't actually realize that the LFO was set to the filter cutoff, which added in a whole new, you know, area of tonal creation. So again, I've tweaked down the oscillators, so I might just bring both of them down to 16 here. Nice. Again, add a little bit of that sidechain I seem to love so much. There we go. And I've got a brand new pad patch. Thank you very much. So I could call that Regen Pad 001. Thank you very much. Saved. Great, you know? Just really, really cool and great sounding. And again, yeah, you can get into the whole, like, you know, push the button, do it again kind of thing. And it's really quite impressive. Like, I've had 2 or 3 different situations with the Regen, and it's actually like come up with some genuinely quite surprising, really quite clever stuff. So again, it's not your usual just randomizer where, you know, it's like, you know, it is a bit of a roulette spin, of course, but on the end of it, I've found that it's just actually all really great usable stuff. So just to move on a little bit now, we've got these lovely sounds. And again, the final one that I've got here is a noise shaker, which I really wanted. And again, you can see here the resizing capabilities of the plugin. Very aesthetically pleasing plugin. From there, we've just got pure white noise. So again, that WN mode there, white noise. And I've just got this lovely little, again, this ARP that's just bouncing on the 16ths. This time, just straight on the 50%. And again, that's just controlled via the envelope. A more stable white noise with the battery at 100%. No reverb or delay, a little bit of drive, all brightness. No LFO, obviously sidechain. And just gives me that lovely noise-based techno kind of shaker. And if I take that away, you kind of miss it, right? And it's just white noise. But then white noise on the BA-1's quite characterful, thanks to the actual synth it's taken inspiration from, but also because of the battery as well, because it's got these audio dropouts and a bit of granularity because the battery is, you know, seemingly running quite low here. But does definitely need one more element. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go into a little bit of sound design here, and I'm just going to take some of these plugins off this duplicated channel, and I'm going to go here, and I'm just going to give this a nice blue color again so we know exactly what it is. In fact, let's just go with the gray because it's a bit simpler. But what I can do from here is I will basically go with the sound that I've got here. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make like a really nice dub techno kind of stab, and we'll start off with oscillator 1. We'll move the crossfader all the way up, and you'll just see how quick it is to get something really, really nicely going. So again, you've got this fine pitch control here, so great for detuning. So it might just detune by a couple of little bits here, maybe 3 or 4 will be fine. I think it's like a cent either side, I believe. And from there, we'll make sure that we're on a sawtooth wave. So it will sound very, very bland. But that being said, it will work quite nicely. So again, we'll just rename this Dub Techno Stab. Okay. So we've got just a very bland kind of thing so far. We'll take the side chain off. We'll put the battery up to 100%. We've got no elements of tonality at all, no drive, anything else. And again, you can save this kind of thing as a default patch as you begin. And again, this can be the basis for all of your sound design elements. Now, from here, I'm going to put the second oscillator in. I'll just do that to, again, if you double click, it will take you to the maximum value here. And again, the crossfade is now equal between oscillator 1 and 2. And what I can do, I'm actually going to just drop those down to 16, the octave down. And I'm actually going to put this on octave control, which means I can now start to do semitone based pitchings. So what I quite like is for this dub techno kind of thing, it's always like a kind of a minor it's like kind of a minor third, or a very, very small detune between the oscillators. So you get this really nice sound. Again, we can pop up to the 8th. There we go. That's a deceptively quite fat sound, actually. And again, the envelope is all the way like up almost here, so we are getting that nice top end. Decay and release are actually very similar to where I would like them to be. So what we could actually do is bring the envelope level down, because I want that warm, almost like bassy kind of sound first. It's a very basic sound, but it really works nicely. And a lot of it comes down to how the reverb and the delays work with it as well. So again, I can bring up, and what I might do is actually bring up the release as well. Again, try octave 1, oscillator 1 at octave level 8. Do like the lower version. Nice. And then from there, bring the filter down a bit. We'll also go quite hardcore with the reverb. Want more length on that because I want it to really wash. Nice. Wonder about that 16 again. That's too much, isn't it? And what you can actually do is put a little bit of LFO, throw the filter on, have it be a slowish kind of LFO with a small amount. And maybe a little bit more. Get a little bit more of the filter coming out because it is the target is the filter cutoff. So we can slow that down a little bit and just give it a bit more of like an undulation as it goes through. Now I am imagining this as kind of like a that kind of thing as well. And if I want a little bit more stability, I can actually turn the velocity off. So all that modulation you're hearing is coming just solely from the LFO on the filter itself. So again, we could try a little bit of a nice decay, or delay, I should say. We'll flip that into note sync, and we'll put this on a nice 8 dotted. Bit more length. Nice. Add a little bit more drive. Little tiny touch. Bit more brightness, a little less darkness. I might just bring the cutoff down a little bit more. And what you can hear there is the filter is not lifting up too much now, and the LFO is in that sweet spot. So from there, what we can do is more than likely just play a little section, and we'll hit record. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring a couple of things up here because it needs to be a bit pluckier actually to get it to cut through. yeah, we can then have that, and then we can just quantize it to the 16th. Thank you very much. Lovely. And then we can go about doing a little bit of tonal shaping. And again, if we hear that in isolation with the drums themselves, it sounds pretty good. I'm just going to turn it a little bit. Yeah, really nice and calm, and then automatable up. And again, changeable as well. Into more of like a pad. Or a lead sound. With the drums. Again, you get all of that tonal control using the battery and everything else. As you can see, I'm starting to get a bit lost in it, which is the beautiful thing, right? Because it is such a well laid out, very simple. And again, like the original unit, very deceptive in terms of how much depth and how much tonality and variation and possibility that you have with such a plugin. Definitely going to save this. Thank you very much. I'm going to call this ADSR Dub Techno 001 because I'm so original. And now we have that in our arsenal forever. And again, if I wanted to, I can reset all the way back. Again, I did go over the top of an existing preset before, but again, if I play that now, just a regular, what I could do then is save that, and not just to the user, I can go one step out to BA-1, and then what I could do from here is I could set it up as an init, I believe. Actually it won't show up. So what you'll need to do is to save that again. I'll move that over. Good to know. You can just put the init in the user folder. And again, with, for the Logic users out there, you can also save that within its own plugin architecture as well, which is quite nice. It's quite an easy thing to do. And again, you've got all of those elements at your disposal. So yeah, that's a really, really lovely little introduction, just to scratch the surface just a little bit of Baby Audio BA-1, and fantastic achievements. And I'm really, really glad that Baby Audio have, done such a great job on this very, very first plugin synth of theirs. So yeah, definitely worth grabbing, I would think. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the chat. So we're going to pop the chat out, and we're going to slide that away as I get myself nice and organized. Okay. Micah says, awesome work, Paul. Thank you very much. That's very nice. I'm going to start from the top. I'm going to start from the top. Hello to TI80 Mark. Nice to see you, my good friend. And yes, just looking here. It will be interesting to hear it through the vintage bit crusher like the Akai RX950 or the SP950. Yeah, very true. Yeah, very true. ADSR, hello there, the team, having a blast playing alongside. There's really a few interesting tricks to it. That certainly suits my style and taste. Good stuff. Good stuff. I could modulate all sorts of stuff in there really easily with Bitwig. Yeah, exactly. I mean, Bitwig 5 on its way out, which is really exciting as well, which is not a DAW I'm massively knowledgeable about, but I've had some amazing experiences with it in the past. Retro Sound Studio, great plugs, or Baby Audio Super VHS. Yes, do love anything VHS-ish. How is Paul doing with this demo, Baby Audio? Don't shame me. Baby Audio says he's doing very well indeed. Oh, good. I'm glad. Regen, hello Jai. Regen is like a random value generator for synth parameters. Yeah, very cool. Some good Bitwig talk going on there. Excellent. Battery, as Jai says, is like vibrato or a drift. Yeah, it also does an element of like bit reduction, or not just sample rate division. It's like it's proper bit rate reduction. It's proper bit crushing, if you will. And also as well, there's elements of audio dropout and warble and warm flutter and stuff. Yeah, it's very, very cool. Yeah, sounding great in the cans right now. Thank God for that. Jai, but the genre here is techno. Sometimes it's nice to have simple sounds played rather than complicated ones. This sort of synths offer simple sounds with some unique things added to them. Yeah, and again, adding in, layering, doing all that stuff really works beautifully. Exactly. Yeah. So ADSR asking about in regard to the side chains, does the pre and post mean before and after the effects in the plugin? Yes, indeed it does. There you go. We've got some buyers or sellers remorse going on in the chat with Tom Adams Music here. I miss my CS01. I wish I'd never sold it. I've had that feeling with a few since. Interestingly enough, not with my Access Virus TI2 Polar, which I sold last year, which I was actually quite glad to see the back of because it never stayed in time. But there's been a few since that I've definitely felt that way about. Ask me offline about some of the amazing bits of kit I've sold. Very big mistake. So there you go. So just looking here. Baby Audio says we actually first implemented the breath control feature controlled through a sidechain input. Wow, little nuggets of wisdom here from Baby Audio. But in testing the plugin, most of our users said they wanted a more extreme effect, so we evolved it from a breath control emulation to the current sidechain implementation. And that's again at the heart of what we were saying about, this is not a straight shot for shot emulation of the original synth, the CS01. It is an evolution of it. It's taken advantage of modern plugin architecture and the possibilities of being able to do something that's a little bit more contemporary while mixing in the best parts of it. So great stuff. And it is like, as Mick McCarthy says here, is that the former football manager? That'd be interesting if he had a sideline in techno, wouldn't it? I was basically sold on this before it was even released, as their products are consistently awesome. Love the inclusion of the Michael Oakley presets as well. Yeah, I mean, you've got some great people in the presets here. You've got Michael Oakley, Sammy Rabia, Pegboard Nerds, Venus Theory, the man who has probably the most goldenly delicious voice in all of music production tutorials on YouTube. Yes, you can tell him that. And, amazing stuff. Like, great presets. I'm finding more out about it all the time. And again, simple yet just really beautifully, elegantly deep. So, yeah. Mono and poly modes both available, absolutely, which I think we just looked at towards the end there. So, yeah, excellent stuff. I really enjoy going through the chats, and I really enjoy, actually, getting to know you guys on the streams as well. It's absolutely fantastic. And yeah, I'm having an absolute ball here at ADSR. So just to close off then, remember it's 50% off until May 25th. The launch price of Baby Audio BA-1. You get 50 extra bonus presets designed by the super talented guys at ADSR, and they allow me to come on these lovely streams and to show you how to get the very best out of them. So yeah, amazing stuff. Really enjoyed this stream, as I have with all the streams at ADSR. I'm sure there's going to be plenty more coming. And again, don't hesitate to get hold of Baby Audio BA-1. Like I say, it's becoming a major part of my workflow for sure. So amazing stuff. Yeah, thank you very much, Mark. Really appreciate the kind words about the demo there, TI-80 Mark. Just tried it with Fluid Chords. Seems to support MPE. Yeah, interesting. We learned something new right at the end there. Just reading the final little comments there from Matthias Bowden. Thank you very much again to the team at ADSR. Again, final little reminder, if you like what you see in here, do give this video a like. Drop us a comment, not just in the chat, but on the main video. Share this with all your buddies, and more importantly, please do subscribe to ADSR, because it really does help all of us continue to have fun on this here channel. So amazing stuff. Thank you very much, guys. Take it easy. Much love, and I shall see you very soon indeed, hopefully. Bye for now.